driving long into the night. The road stretched out endlessly, a black ribbon cutting through the vast desert landscape. Jennifer, Mark, and their two friends, Emily and Chris, embarked on a road trip to celebrate their college graduation. Excitement filled the air as they set off on their adventure, but little did they know that this trip would turn into a nightmare they would never forget. As they drove through the night, and the air conditioning struggled to keep them cool, they decided to take a detour to see a famous abandoned ghost town they had heard about. The road to the ghost town was rugged, and the further they ventured, the more desolate the surroundings became. Unease settled over the group, but they brushed it off as they were eager to explore the mysterious ghost town. When they finally arrived, the place seemed frozen in time, with empty buildings and eerie silence. They took pictures and laughed about the legends they had heard, feeling a sense of adventure despite the eerie atmosphere. As the sun began to set, they headed back to the main road. The desert landscape transformed under the dim light, taking on a haunting and ethereal quality. A dense fog rolled in, reducing visibility to almost nothing. Jennifer gripped the wheel tightly, trying to stay on the road while battling her rising anxiety. The radio signal faded away, leaving them with only the sound of their own breathing and the distant howling of the wind. Mark tried to use his phone for navigation, but there was no cell service. They were entirely alone in the vast desert, surrounded by an unnatural silence. Suddenly, Emily pointed out a lone figure standing on the side of the road ahead. As they got closer, they could see that it was a young woman, dressed in tattered clothes and appearing disoriented. Concerned for her safety, they slowed down and asked if she needed help. The woman looked up with hollow, lifeless eyes, and before they could react, she lunged at the car, her hands pounding on the windows. Panicking, Jennifer hit the gas pedal, and they sped away, leaving the woman behind in the dust. Shaken, they tried to calm their nerves, convincing themselves that it was just a strange encounter. But as they drove further, they saw more figures on the roadside, all looking just as lost and desperate as the first woman. Fear gripped their hearts as they realized they were surrounded by these haunting specters. They tried to escape, but the figures seemed to materialize out of thin air, blocking every route they attempted to take. The car's engine sputtered, and the headlights flickered, as if the vehicle itself was succumbing to the presence that surrounded them. As the night wore on, their terror grew. Each figure seemed to whisper haunting messages, their voices echoing in their minds. Jennifer and her friends could feel an inexplicable force pulling at their sanity, driving them to the brink of madness. Desperate for an escape, they stumbled upon an old gas station, long abandoned and decrepit. They rushed inside, hoping to find a way to call for help. But inside, they discovered something even more horrifying, a collection of old newspaper clippings and photographs documenting the tragic history of the ghost town they had visited earlier. The ghost town was not simply abandoned, it had been the site of a mass tragedy decades ago. The townspeople had fallen victim to a deadly plague, and their souls were left to wander the desert, forever trapped in torment. As they read the haunting accounts, the figures they had encountered outside the gas station appeared before them again. This time, they reached out with cold, bony hands, beckoning the group to join them in their eternal suffering. With trembling hands, Jennifer managed to start the car once more, and they sped away from the gas station. But the figures pursued them relentlessly, appearing in the rearview mirror with their empty eyes fixed on the terrified travelers. Time seemed to blur as they drove through the night, their fear and exhaustion threatening to consume them. They questioned their own sanity, unsure if what they were experiencing was real or a shared hallucination brought on by the haunting presence. As dawn broke, the figures vanished, leaving the road clear and empty once more. Jennifer and her friends had survived the night, but the horrors they witnessed would haunt them forever. They vowed never to speak of that night again, knowing that no one would believe their chilling tale. The road trip they had embarked on with excitement and hope had turned into a nightmarish ordeal that would forever taint their memories of adventure and freedom. From that day on, they would carry the weight of that cursed road trip, haunted by the souls of the long dead and the darkness that lurked in the corners of the world. The road they traveled on that fateful night would be forever etched in their minds, a chilling reminder of the forces that could await any unsuspecting traveler. One evening, a young woman named Lisa was driving home after visiting friends. It was a rainy night, and the roads were slick and treacherous. As she navigated through the winding, dimly lit streets, she noticed a car following her closely. At first, she dismissed it as a coincidence, but the car's presence began to unnerve her. Lisa decided to take a few turns to see if the car would continue following her, and sure enough, it remained hot on her tail. Panic started to set in, and she tried to call a friend or family member for help, but her phone had no signal. Feeling increasingly vulnerable, Lisa decided to head to the nearest police station. As she drove, the car behind her seemed to grow more aggressive, tailgating and flashing its headlights. Her heart pounded in her chest, and she feared for her safety. To shake off her pursuer, Lisa made a risky maneuver, turning down a dark, deserted road. The car continued to follow, and she felt a sense of dread wash over her. Desperate for help, she honked her horn and flashed her headlights, hoping that someone might notice and come to her aid. Finally, she saw a glimmer of hope as she spotted a hotel up ahead. The neon lights provided a sense of comfort, and she pulled in, hoping to find safety in the presence of others. To her relief, the car that had been following her sped past without stopping. Trembling and shaken, Lisa approached the hotel attendant, a middle-aged man named Tom. She recounted the terrifying ordeal, and he assured her that she was safe now. Tom offered to call the police, and together, they waited for the authorities to arrive. As the police investigated, they discovered that the car that had been following Lisa was stolen, and the driver had a criminal record. He had been targeting lone drivers on the deserted roads, seeking to intimidate and possibly rob them. Lisa's quick thinking and determination to find safety had likely saved her from a dangerous situation. From that day on, she never took her safety for granted while driving, and she always made sure to stay alert and aware of her surroundings. This story serves as a chilling reminder that driving, especially during nighttime and in remote areas, can be fraught with potential dangers. It's essential for everyone to be cautious, stay vigilant, and trust their instincts when faced with potentially hazardous situations on the road. One cold winter night, Alex was driving home from a late-night shift at work. The roads were slick with ice, and the snow was falling heavily, creating hazardous driving conditions. Despite being exhausted, Alex knew he had to stay alert to make it home safely. As he drove along a dimly lit stretch of road, he noticed a car ahead of him driving erratically. The car swerved from one lane to another, its headlights flashing sporadically. Alex became concerned for the driver's safety, thinking they might be intoxicated or in distress. He decided to keep a safe distance behind the car, but as he did, he noticed something even more unsettling. The car seemed to be driving in a seemingly random pattern, as if it were trying to avoid something on the road. Alex couldn't see anything blocking the way, and his unease grew. He considered calling the police to report the erratic driver, but his phone's battery was almost dead, and he didn't want to risk losing all means of communication in case of an emergency. Instead, he decided to stay vigilant and focused on navigating the icy road. As the erratic car continued to swerve, Alex noticed something horrifying in his rearview mirror. Another pair of headlights emerged from the darkness, and the car was rapidly gaining on him. The vehicle behind him seemed to be in a rush, closing the gap between them with alarming speed. Alex's heart pounded, and his instincts told him that something was terribly wrong. Fear gripped him as he realized that he was trapped between two potentially dangerous drivers, both behaving erratically on the treacherous road. He considered pulling over to let both cars pass, but he feared that doing so might put him in an even more vulnerable position. With his phone's battery almost dead, he couldn't call for help, and the nearest gas station or rest area was miles away. Desperate to get away from the menacing vehicles, Alex decided to speed up, hoping to distance himself from both cars. As he accelerated, the erratic car ahead of him seemed to match his speed, making it impossible for him to overtake. The car behind him continued to tailgate aggressively, its headlights blinding him in the rearview mirror. Alex's hands trembled on the steering wheel as he tried to maintain control, but the icy road made it increasingly difficult to maneuver. In a panic, Alex spotted a turnoff up ahead and made a split-second decision to take it. He hoped that the erratic car wouldn't follow him, and that the tailgating car would continue straight ahead. He turned onto the narrow, snow-covered road, praying it would lead to safety. To his relief, the tailgating car continued on the main road, leaving Alex alone on the deserted, winding path. He continued driving, his heart still racing, until he reached a more populated area. There, he stopped at a hotel and finally called the police to report the dangerous drivers. When he arrived home, shaken and thankful to be safe, he couldn't help but wonder what had led to the terrifying encounter on the road that night. The incident left him deeply disturbed, and he vowed to always be cautious and vigilant while driving, especially during harsh weather conditions. To this day, Alex can't forget the unsettling experience, and it serves as a chilling reminder of the unexpected dangers that can arise on the road, and the importance of being alert and responsive to ensure one's safety while driving. One chilly evening, Sarah, a young woman in her mid-20s, was driving home alone after a late-night dinner with friends. The city streets were dimly lit, and most people had retreated indoors, leaving the roads quiet and empty. Despite being familiar with driving alone at night, Sarah couldn't shake off the eerie feeling that crept up her spine. As she approached a stoplight, she noticed a car pulled up next to her. Inside was a man, and he seemed to be staring at her intently. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine, as his gaze felt invasive and unsettling. She quickly looked away, trying to avoid eye contact, hoping he would simply drive off once the light turned green. The light changed, and Sarah continued on her way. To her surprise, the men in the other car followed her, maintaining the same speed and distance behind her car. Her heart started to race, and she couldn't ignore the sinking feeling that she was being followed. Determined not to lead the stranger to her home, Sarah decided to take an alternate route, hoping to lose the pursuer. She made a few unexpected turns, but to her horror, the men persisted, following her every move. Fear gripped her heart, and her mind raced with thoughts of what his intentions might be. Was he merely lost and driving in the same direction coincidentally, or was he deliberately targeting her? As the minutes ticked by, Sarah's anxiety grew. She decided to call a friend, hoping to find comfort in their voice and to have someone on the line who knew her whereabouts. Her trembling fingers dialed the number, and her friend answered with concern as he sensed the fear in her voice. Sarah relayed the situation, and her friend reassured her that he would come to her aid. He instructed her to drive to a well-lit, public place where she could safely wait for him. Following his advice, Sarah found solace in the sight of a bustling gas station. She pulled in and parked near the entrance, hoping the presence of other people would deter the persistent pursuer. To her alarm, the men parked nearby, still watching her. Sarah's heart pounded as she quickly locked all the doors, not daring to make eye contact. She kept her friend on the line, providing a description of the man and his car. Feeling vulnerable and desperate for help, she observed the man from the corner of her eye. He lingered by his car, occasionally glancing in her direction. His intentions remained unclear, but Sarah knew she couldn't risk finding out. Minutes that felt like hours passed, and finally, her friend arrived at the gas station. The sight of another person approaching Sarah's car seemed to unsettle the pursuer, and he quickly got back into his car and drove away. Relief washed over Sarah, but the experience had left her shaken and fearful. She thanked her friend for coming to her rescue and stayed at the gas station until she was sure the stranger was gone. Sarah later reported the encounter to the police, who took her statement and provided tips for staying safe while driving alone. They advised her to be cautious of her surroundings, to trust her instincts, and to always have someone she could call for help in such situations. The incident had a profound impact on Sarah, and she became more cautious while driving alone at night. She vowed never to ignore her instincts and to be proactive in safeguarding her personal safety. Thank you again for joining us for another video. If you liked the video, please like, subscribe and comment down below and let us know what you would like to hear in the near future. See you all again soon.